How many survivors of Sodom and Gomorrah were there? Just Lot and his daughters. Nobody else. They escaped. The whole city was leveled, everybody dead. Unless the Lord had left us survivors. Why did the Lord leave survivors in Israel? Not because they were any good. Not because they were righteous. He only left them survivors because of his promise to Abraham to build a nation out of them. That's the only reason. They had no merits of their own to even have an existence. Unless the Lord, if he had not remembered his promise, Israel would have been obliterated. They had no grounds to stand on. The multitude of your sacrifices, what are they to me? I have more than enough of burnt offerings, of rams and the fat of fattened animals. I have no pleasure in the blood of bulls and lambs and goats. When you come to appear before me, who has asked this of you? Well, I guess in a sort of a legalistic way of looking at it, you could say, well, Lord, I can start quoting some verses here in Leviticus and Exodus where you actually have asked us for these sacrifices. You know, they could have quoted back to God, got out their scrolls and said, well, you actually did say you wanted us to sacrifice burnt offerings, rams, fattened animals, blood of bulls and lambs and goats. But if you argued back with that way, you would be missing the point, because the point was they were offering these things, but they were ignoring the most vulnerable people of society, not taking care of the widows and orphans, and they were corrupt in their daily dealings. And so he says, when you come before me, who has asked this of you? This trampling of my courts, trampling of my temple. Stop bringing your meaningless offerings. Your incense is detestable to me. Incense represented their prayers going up before the Lord when they would come to the temple and worship God and burn incense. That was the prayers of the saints going up to the Lord. Stop burning the incense. I don't want your prayers anymore. Your new moons, your Sabbaths, your convocations. I can't bear your assemblies. Wow. Your new moon feasts and your appointed festivals. I hate them. All of the things I ordered you to do. Now when you think about that, Paul asked in one place, is there any advantage to being a Jew? Is there any advantage to having the law? Is there any advantage to having the patriarchs? Is there any advantage to having the offerings, the sacrifices? Is there any advantage? He said, yes! It's a great advantage to have all of those. They all point to Christ. But here he's saying, I hate all that. At least I hate the way you're doing it. They've become a burden to me. Don't come to my temple anymore. Don't bring me any more sacrifices. Every time you do, it's just like heaping a burden on me. I'm just tired of it. I'm done with it. I'm done with your meetings. Don't come to the temple anymore. Don't bring me any more sacrifices. When you spread out your hands in prayer, I hide my eyes from you. Even when you offer many prayers, I'm not listening. Your hands are full of blood. We'll get to the good stuff here in a minute. But God says, I just can't take it anymore. In fact, if you do come, I'm hiding. I'm not even listening anymore. And so then he says, wash and make yourselves clean. Take your evil deeds out of my sight. Stop doing wrong. Learn to do right. Seek justice. Defend the oppressed. Take up the cause of the fatherless. Plead the case of the widow. Come now, let's settle the matter, says the Lord. First of all, stop doing wrong. Learn to do right. Start taking care of those that are vulnerable in society. Start doing the things. Start living out the character that I want you to have. Plead the case of the widow. And then let's sit down. Then let's sit down and talk about these other things you're doing, these other sacrifices. Then we'll settle up. That was God's ultimatum to Israel. In Micah 6, which we read a little bit ago, 6 through 8, with what shall I come before the Lord and bow down before the exalted God? This is not an isolated text in Isaiah 1. Many of the prophets have the same thinking. And Micah basically is speaking to the same people of Israel during the same time period that Isaiah is, to the same kings. And he says some of the same things. With what will I come before the Lord and bow down before the exalted God? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased if I bring to him 10,000 or thousands of rams and 10,000 rivers of olive oil? Many of the sacrifices needed to have oil added to them. You know, if God is pleased with a ram, would he be pleased with 100 rams? Would he be really impressed with 1,000? How about if I just brought God 10,000 rams? How about if I offered to God hundreds of thousands of rams, and instead of a little olive oil, a whole river? Instead of a river, how about 100 rivers or thousands of rivers of olive oil? Would that impress God? Shall I offer even my own firstborn? Some of the pagan religions offered their own children. Is that what God wants? He has shown you, O man, what is good and what he requires of you. Act justly. Love mercy. Walk humbly with your God. This is his invitation. After the ultimatum, God says, this is what I want. I want you to act justly towards people. I want you to love being merciful to those people in society who need mercy. And I want you to walk every day humbly with me. I want you to walk with me. I want you to walk like I would walk. This is God's invitation. The highest form of worship. It's not coming together in the assembly, at least in the Old Testament. Might have some transfer to the New as well. It's not assembling and giving God some stuff. The highest form of worship is, first of all, walking humbly with your God. Meeting with him in the temple, recognizing his greatness, recognizing our lowliness and the fact that we are totally unacceptable to God without an offering. Bringing him an offering, and then God saying, I'll accept that offering so that you can approach me. And then going from that assembly and then walking thankfully and humbly with our God, showing mercy and acting justly in everything we do. This is the highest form of worship. And so God's invitation to Israel is also echoed in the book of Hosea, chapter 6, verse 6. Same thought, different prophet, even a little bit different group of people and kings here involved, but God says, I desire mercy. I don't want more sacrifices. I desire acknowledgement. In other words, I want you to know me. I want knowledge of me. I want you to know me. I want you to be in relationship with me. I don't want more burnt offerings. I want you to know me. I want you to walk with me. It's also mentioned in Amos 5, Zechariah 7, Malachi 1. This is a theme that's through all of the prophets in the Old Testament. And this is also a song. So we're going to sing this song. We're going to sing this. How many of you have sung this song before? Okay, we got 2 of us. We got 3 of us. Okay. Where 2 or 3 are gathered together, right? We're going to sing it. So I think I'm going to give Nancy a microphone, even though she's going to go, don't do that to me. Okay, I won't. Here's what we want to do, ladies. I want the ladies to echo the guys, except where it says all, and then we all just kind of come together and sing together right there. It goes like this. He has shown you, oh man, what is good and what the Lord requires of you, to act justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. He has shown you.
He has shown you.
Oh man, what is good and what the Lord requires of you. To act justly.
To act justly.
And to love mercy.
And to love mercy.
And to walk humbly with your God. That's the highest form of worship. That's the highest form of worship. Jesus provides the answer for us. Following Jesus is the answer. Following Jesus allows us to express that highest form of worship. This morning, we also learned in Romans 8, being led by the Spirit that Jesus left allows us to worship God and be in His presence and to please Him. In Matthew 12, Jesus and the disciples are walking through some grain fields, and the disciples start picking the grain, rubbing it between their hands, eating the kernels. They're hungry. And wouldn't you know it, some leaders, some religious teachers, some Pharisees come along and accuse Jesus, you're breaking the law. It's not allowed to eat grain on the Sabbath. As a matter of fact, by rubbing the grain between your hands, you're working. You're breaking the Sabbath law of not doing any labor. Jesus says, if you had known what these words mean, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the innocent. For the Son of Man is the Lord the Sabbath. What's Jesus saying? Jesus is taking an Old Testament principle, Hosea chapter 6, verse 6, and he's bringing it forth. Yeah, I know he hasn't died yet, but he's bringing forth the principle, and he's going to connect it between the two testaments. And he's saying what it's really about is I desire mercy. That's what worship is, not sacrifice. Another man had a withered hand right after that. Jesus heals him on the Sabbath. And they accuse Jesus, why did you heal the man on the Sabbath? You're doing what's not permitted on the Sabbath. Again, Jesus would refer this, I desire mercy, showing mercy on the man. You're all about keeping this letter of the law. But you don't know what the meaning of these words are from God. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. All of the law was to lead people to humbly walk with God, to love justice, and to love mercy. Many religious people participate in orthodoxy, religious orthodoxy, yet their hearts do not love God, nor do they seek or know God or walk in His presence. We must not substitute religious traditions and let them take a place of having a relationship with God. We must not think that practicing any set of religious traditions or orthodoxy or ways of assembly or ways of sacrificing, we must not think ever that that replaces walking with God. May we never be like those whom Jesus described. Come before the Lord, raise their hands, prostrate before them in worship, fulfilling some requirements of law, but missing the whole purpose of what that meeting was about. That meeting was about realizing how great God is, how unworthy we are, and how we need then to have a sacrifice to offer. And because we are covered, because of that sacrifice, get up and walk humbly with our God. That was the reason for the sacrifices in the Old Testament. That's the reason for the assembly in the New Testament. That's the reason we come together, is to remind ourselves how great God is, how unworthy we are. And we have the perfect sacrifice that makes us able to come before God without any sin, because Jesus has borne our sin. And then tomorrow we go out and we walk humbly with the God who we just remembered did this for us. And we walk in justice and we love mercy. But Jesus said of these people honor me with their lips. Oh yeah, they come together in their assemblies and they say all this pretty stuff. But then they go out and act in corruption, abuse the poor, don't take care of the widows and the orphans. They don't take care of the people who need it most. They honor me with their lips, but their hearts, they're not with me. Following Jesus is the answer. When people don't have their hearts with Jesus, they're just putting on a mask, and they're just covering up the evil hearts that are really underneath. So this year, look at the highest form of worship that God is calling us to. As we talk about who we are, we're ambassadors of Christ. Are we not worshipers of God as well? We are worshipers of God. What is the highest form of praise and worship we can give our God in 2019? Here it is. Foundational. First of all, walk humbly with your God. Micah chapter 6, verse 8. That's the foundation of it. Tomorrow when you get up, tonight when you go to bed, this afternoon when you go home, lay down on the floor, lay yourself out before the Lord, or stand up and look up to the heavens. Find a place in your closet or whoever and just say, God, I want to walk humbly with you every day. I know you're a great God. I don't know why you're merciful toward me, but you are. And through Jesus Christ, you've given a sacrifice and I can approach you. Thank you that I can approach you. Tomorrow, may I go out and walk as humbly toward other people and as merciful toward other people as you have been towards me. Walk humbly with your God. And because you realize from this assembly that you have a great God who is holy, who has provided a sacrifice for you to come into his presence, then extend that mercy to other people and act justly and righteously. Do right regardless of what it might cost you. And so what you will be doing then is, first of all, loving God, and in acting justly and mercifully, you will be loving people, and you will be changing the world. Because our world doesn't act like that. But what we're about is loving God, loving people, and changing the world. Why? Because that's the highest form of worship. We're going to sing a song right now, and I think it's about following Jesus. And I think it starts out sweetly, Lord, I have heard you calling. Come on, Michael, and lead us in this song. Come follow me. Following Jesus is the answer. Make the commitment to give Jesus, to give the Spirit, to give God our Father the